and I think it is a special blessing for the Latino community.
Next on Currents News, Archbishop Jose Gomez is the first Latino to lead America's bishops, winning an overwhelming victory today. The Supreme Court is hearing the case of the Dreamers, deciding if thousands of young immigrants can stay in the United States. Jimmy Carter is back in the hospital. We'll have the latest on his condition. Plus, New York City is getting ready for a blast of winter weather. There could be snow tonight. The news starts right now. Good evening, I'm Emily Druby. America's bishops making history today at their national summit meeting in Baltimore. Archbishop Jose Gomez is the first Latino ever elected president of the U.S. Bishops' Conference. The Mexican-born leader is also the Archbishop of Los Angeles, the largest archdiocese in the country.
Archbishop Jose Gomez, with 176, is elected the new president.
A historic milestone reached by an overwhelming majority. America's Catholic bishops electing Archbishop Jose Gomez of Los Angeles as the president of the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops during their General Assembly. The Mexican native is the first Latino to hold the title.
I'm humbled by your support, and I think it is a special blessing for the Latino community as we always reflect on how important it is to take care of our people.
Archbishop Gomez begins his 3-year presidential term tomorrow at the conclusion of the meetings. He currently leads the largest and most diverse archdiocese in the country and has long been a champion for immigrant rights. He made it clear they would remain a priority for both him and the Bishops' Conference.
Then we have this situation at the border, which is a tragedy. And we are constantly talking about immigration and especially encouraging our elected officials to do something. I mean, to come up with an immigration reform that is reasonable and possible.
The Archbishops also electing a new vice president. Archbishop Alan Vigneron of Detroit. 6 others were selected as chairman of committees. There was plenty more on the agenda for day 2 of the national meetings. The bishops voted in favor of a new letter in connection with faithful citizenship, the bishops' official voting guidelines. It's being updated to include issues close to Pope Francis's heart, like the environment. The bishops remained firm that the protection of life and opposition to abortion are the most important social priorities of our time. The bishops also concentrated on the Encuentro, the strengthening of Latino and Hispanic ministries. Among their new ideas, adding more Latino deacons and finding better ways for Hispanic youth to become involved in the church. New York's bishops are at the Vatican still, but were able to cast their votes remotely. The final day of the meetings is tomorrow. A new way for parishes to help pregnant women thinking about an abortion is being proposed to the bishops. Archbishop Joseph Naumann is the head of pro-life activities for the Bishops' Conference.
Women facing challenging pregnancies should see the church as a place where they can find help, especially with our myriad of social services and organizations dedicated to meeting the needs of people in crisis.
Archbishop Naumann is proposing all U.S. bishops devote a year of service to pregnant women starting in March. The bishops are accomplishing a lot at their big meeting in Baltimore. On the scene with them is the national correspondent for the Tablet and Crux, Christopher White. He joins us now. Thank you for being with us, Christopher.
Good to be with you, Emily.
Now, first, let me ask you, what is the significance of today's vote to elect a Latino president of the U.S. bishops?
Well, Archbishop Jose Gomez said today, right after his election as president, that it was a vote on behalf of all Latino Catholics in this country, which represents some 40% of American Catholics. That is a number that is growing, representing a changing face of this country and the church. And I think that's something that the Archbishop wanted to elevate, to make it not just about him, but the community that he comes from.
Now, Archbishop Gomez wasn't the only person elected today. Archbishop Alan Vigneron of Detroit is the new vice president. Did his third ballot election surprise anyone?
He was, a longtime member of the U.S. Bishops' Administrative and Executive Committee, the Committee on Doctrine, so folks know him. But it was sort of a three-way race that could have gone in any direction. And so the fact that he came out on top, somewhat quickly, did surprise some observers.
Now, the bishops also voted to approve a new letter in connection with faithful citizenship, the bishops' official voting guidelines. The new letter is coming out ahead of the 2020 presidential election. What does it entail?
Well, the purpose of that letter was to sort of elevate the teaching priorities and emphasis of Pope Francis, to sort of address issues that the previous guide had not, such as climate change, a greater emphasis on migration. Ultimately, some of the bishops were, sort of frustrated that the letter still said that abortion was the preeminent issue, which has, of course, been a long priority of the bishops. But some expressed concern that issues of Pope Francis were not given that same weight and attention.
Christopher White, the national correspondent for the Tablet and Crux, thank you so much for being with us today from Baltimore.
Thank you, Emily.
Archbishop Gomez is leading the charge of Catholic bishops in support of the Dreamers. They are protected from deportation by the DACA program. Today, the Supreme Court is considering their future. Archbishop Gomez is saying, "Our nation made a promise to these Dreamers. We have a moral obligation. It is time for the President and Congress to honor that promise and live up to this obligation." Bishop Joe Vasquez, who heads up the Bishops' Migration Committee, is saying DACA youth are leaders in our parishes and significant contributors to our economy and communities. They are hardworking young people who know the United States as their only home. We continue to urge Congress and the President to work together to find a permanent legislative solution to the plight of the Dreamers. Outside the Supreme Court this morning, a rally in support of DACA. Inside, the 9 justices heard oral arguments on the Trump administration's efforts to shut down the program. Started by President Obama in 2012, DACA allows about 750,000 young immigrants to live here and work legally. Court watchers are saying the conservative majority on the bench appear ready to end the program. The Dreamers are undocumented migrants brought into the United States by their parents. Many of them walked all the way from New York to be in Washington for today's Supreme Court action. Camila Brunell reports on their road to immigration.
This is a mixture of broccoli.
On today's menu, leftover Chinese food.
Rice with shrimp.
It may look like a simple meal,
Some beef with vegetables.
but it's what
broccoli,
fuels
carrots.
about 20 people who walked from New York to D.C. Among them, Alison Duarte, who came to the U.S. from Mexico as a child and is now getting her philosophy and social policy master's degree.
I've established roots here. I've done my undergraduate degree.
The walk is more than 200 miles, and they hope to get the attention of the public and the 9 Supreme Court justices.
I believe that there's one member that could be a sway, that could potentially give us something favorable to the immigrant community.
Duarte is talking about Chief Justice John Roberts, who wants the court to be seen as apolitical, but was nominated by a Republican president and typically joins conservative opinions, but has wavered in the past.
What it is that Republicans want is that legal immigration, that fair choice and that fair action from immigrants.
Joey Rodriguez of the George Washington University College Republican sees DACA as unconstitutional and hopes that Roberts and the others agree.
It's an overreach by the executive branch, and I would like to see it brought forth and passed by the Congress.
Okay, double file now.
Duarte agrees, but says that given the hyper-partisan atmosphere in Washington, a legislative fix seems like a long shot.
As it stands now, there's nothing indicating that a more permanent solution will come.
So instead, she walks, chants, and puts her hope on the highest court in the land.
I really can't see myself somewhere else. So, really, this is my home.
In Northeast Maryland, I'm Camila Burnell reporting.
President Trump wants to kill DACA, claiming his predecessor Barack Obama had no legal right to create the program. Still, he's holding out hope for the Dreamers, tweeting, "If Supreme Court remedies with overturn, a deal will be made with Dems for them to stay." The president provided no details on what that deal might include. In the past, Trump praised DACA's goals and suggested he wanted to preserve it. The battle over the president's impeachment goes on TV tomorrow. Democrats are looking to make their case to the American people with televised hearings. The top U.S. diplomat in Ukraine and his boss are scheduled for the witness chair tomorrow. The inquiry is centered on whether Trump pressured Ukraine to launch a political investigation in exchange for military aid. The president denies any wrongdoing. Jimmy Carter is in the hospital tonight recovering from surgery to relieve pressure on his brain. Gerald Forges reports from Atlanta that the operation is linked to recent tumbles the former president took at his home.
Former President Jimmy Carter will remain in an Atlanta hospital for observation following a procedure to relieve pressure from his brain. The 39th President of the United States had subdural hematoma caused by 2 recent falls in his Georgia home. A subdural hematoma happens when a blood vessel near the surface of the brain bursts. Blood then collects between the brain and its tough outer layer, causing pressure.
What that procedure involves is actually just making a small hole on top of the skull here, and typically a second hole as well, and getting into that fluid collection, which is mostly fluid, is mostly liquefied at this point, and just removing that fluid, taking the pressure off the brain.
The 95-year-old has had several health battles in recent years, including 2 bouts with cancer and those 2 falls just last month.
Those are significant when he broke his hip, but it's also significant because he hit his head probably in one of those falls. When you hit your head like that, what can happen is that you can start to have a slow amount of bleeding on top of the brain, and that slow bleeding eventually can accumulate.
Despite all that, Carter has shown no signs of slowing down. He continues to build houses with Habitat for Humanity and teach Bible study on Sundays, but the church says he will take off this Sunday. In Atlanta, I'm Daryl Fortis reporting.
Former New York Mayor Mike Bloomberg taking another step just hours ago to run for president. He's seen here signing papers to get on the ballot for the Democratic primary in Arkansas. He's already running in Alabama. Bloomberg is saying President Trump has to be defeated. Trump says Bloomberg has no chance of winning. There's a lot more news headed your way. The weather forecasts are predicting some rough weather starting tonight, and it could include snow. The wild scene on the streets of Hong Kong, unrest is bringing the city to the brink of collapse. Rockets are raining down on Israel after a targeted hit on an Islamic leader. Get ready tonight for our coldest weather so far this season. The city sanitation department is making preparations for the possibility of snow overnight. Highways are being salted and plow trucks are on standby. Plunging temperatures could bring a wind chill in the single digits. Winter is still more than a month away. In addition to the New York area, elsewhere in the country, over 240 million people are being warned that they're going to be slammed by winter weather much earlier than expected. Nadia Romero takes a look at the big chill across the nation.
More than 70% of the country bracing for a record-breaking polar plunge.
I'm not ready for it.
Many are sharing bitter feelings about the expected bitter cold temperatures following an early winter storm.
Came a little too soon. I don't have my scraper. I don't know where my boots are.
Snow and ice blanketed part of the plains, Midwest, and Northeast overnight. Over 240 million people are under winter warnings, watches, and advisories. The storm sparking more than 1,200 cancellations at Chicago's O'Hare Airport, where a plane slid off an icy runway.
We thought we were going to flip, so it was definitely scary.
But the biggest issue for many,
now we're watching the temperatures just plummet.
An Arctic plunge. Several cities are opening shelters and warming centers ahead of the frigid temperatures.
We're going to different areas of the city and we're looking for people that maybe for whatever reason don't know about us or some of our partners where they can go in. For whatever reason they may think they just want to tough it out in the weather.
Many schools in the Northeast are closed for the day. Even states in the deep South, as far as Texas and the Florida Panhandle, will have dramatic temperature drops within the span of hours, from the mid-50s to near freezing. In some cases, temperatures are 30 to 40 degrees below normal for this time of year. Nadia Romero, Currents News.
New around the world tonight, riots are still raging in Hong Kong, and officials are warning that the city is on the brink of a collapse into lawlessness. The protesters are squaring off with police all across Hong Kong, demanding democracy. Ivan Watson reports from the scene of a clash in the financial district.
Look at the police retreating. We are in downtown Hong Kong, the heart of the financial district of luxury shopping. Demonstrators had occupied this square. Police ran them out with several rounds of tear gas and then detained dozens. And now a force is leaving and they're being pursued by residents. Come take a look at the defensive posture they're taking right now. This is not a police force that feels secure and confident in its own city. And it gets to the heart of the problem here. The administration is relying on this police force. A substantial portion of the population does not agree with the policies. And you get scenes like this, police hiding their identity, their faces covered, with the crowd hurling abuse and curses at them. The worst crisis the city has seen in a generation. Ivan Watson, Hong Kong.
That was Ivan Watson reporting from Hong Kong. The city's chief executive, Carrie Lam, is calling the protesters enemies of the people. A push to shut down the subway system is set for tomorrow. A top jihadist is dead tonight, killed in Gaza by Israeli forces. A surprise airstrike before dawn this morning hit the home of Baha Abu al-Attah. He's the commander of the Palestinian Islamic Jihad. Israel called him a ticking time bomb and blamed him for recent rocket and sniper attacks against Israelis. In response to the killings, Islamic Jihad unleashed a barrage of missiles targeting central and southern Israel. The rocket strikes from Gaza are raising fears of an escalating new conflict. For the first time in years, Israel shut down schools in the area as a precaution. At least 2 Israeli men were wounded by shrapnel from the attacks. A Catholic priest and his dad are dead tonight, victims of an attack by ISIS. Father Hovsa Bidoan and his father were gunned down while traveling in a car in northeastern Syria. They were on their way to supervise the restoration of an Armenian Catholic church in eastern part of the country. A Catholic deacon was wounded in the attack. A Syrian Christian from Aleppo is telling his story about being kidnapped by Islamic terrorists. He feared he was going to die, as did so many abduction victims before him. His faith helped him endure and convinced his captors that he should live. Melissa Butts has the powerful story.
On October 19, 2012, Maurice Agab was in a liquor store run by his sons in Aleppo, Syria. Suddenly, 3 Islamic fundamentalists entered, pointed a gun at him, and bound his hands. They stole everything he had and stuffed him into the trunk of a car. He went 2 days without food in an abandoned room, with other prisoners awaiting a fatal end.
We were initially very afraid because we heard they killed everyone they kidnapped. I was afraid of death. Nevertheless, I felt something thanks to the prayer I said. It was the longest prayer of my life. I felt peace and faith in God. Before the interrogation, I abandoned myself to Him and felt an inner peace that helped me get through this painful experience.
They accuse Maurice of promoting alcohol consumption, which is forbidden for Muslims. During the interrogation, he convinced them that the store was not his and that he was not an enemy of Muslims. In fact, he told them that as a Christian, he prayed for them. His witness convinced them and even moved one of the abductors, who then asked for forgiveness for having treated him so poorly.
I experienced what it feels like to forgive when one of them apologized to me. I told him I forgave because my Lord, the Lord Jesus, taught me to forgive and love my enemies. I told him I didn't consider him an enemy, but a brother. I said we should love one another, forgive one another, walk together, and improve our country together.
Maurice was freed, and he returned home where everyone anxiously awaited him. Now he lives as a refugee in Belgium along with his family. He had never spoken about this terrible experience until he was contacted by the Catholic Episcopal Board of Aleppo, an organization that shares stories of exemplary Christians. Melissa Butts, Currents News.
The former president of Bolivia is in Mexico tonight. Evo Morales seeking political asylum there after violent protest accusing him of election fraud. When Morales said he was leaving, he talked about the role of the Catholic Church.
I would like to inform here with the Vice President and the Minister of Health that I have listened to the Central Workers Union. Also listening to the Catholic Church, I have decided to resign from my position as president.
Once he had fled Bolivia, Morales claimed he was the victim of a coup. Bolivia's bishops strongly deny that.
What's happening in Bolivia is not a coup. We say this in front of all Bolivian citizens and the international community. We ask Bolivians for peace and to not commit any acts of vandalism or revenge or anything we would regret. We all have a serious responsibility to defend the life of all Bolivians.
The bishops are asking Bolivia's military to protect the country's citizens and their property. Still to come on Currents News, many U.S. troops are far away from home for Christmas, but a woman is reaching out to them. It's a big project, very big. Finally tonight, a New Hampshire woman issued a challenge ahead of this holiday season. Laura Landerman Garber wants to make sure every man and woman in the military gets a Christmas card no matter where they are across the world. And the campaign is picking up steam. Already 100,000 cards have been crafted and handwritten, some even coming from candidates for America's top office. Jean Mackin reports from inside the workshop.
Wind your way through the stacks and sacks, boxes and bins along the trail of bales of mail, and you'll find Laura in her Hollis workshop.
This is like my Santa's workshop.
16 years ago, she enlisted her family in sending holiday greetings to troops.
I love that one.
2 years ago, she set a goal, 5,000 cards for everyone on board an aircraft carrier. She got triple that amount. So she formed the nonprofit Holiday Cards for Our Military New Hampshire Challenge to help with the postage and asked students across the state to sign on.
The message that we want to give to our warriors, to our freedom fighters who are far away from home.
50,000 cards went out last year, and this year, the challenge reached every state. So far, 30 states and Canada have sent in more than 100,000 cards. This box just arrived from schools in Hawaii.
Look at all these cards. This is amazing. Look at Santa on the beach.
And since it's primary season, 'tis the season to get all the candidates involved in writing cards.
Here's Bernie. Here's Elizabeth Warren. Here's Governor Sununu. It's kind of like our own little first in the nation, right? We started this right here. New Hampshire, we're fierce, we're small in size, but we're so large in heart.
All this holiday spirit ships out in 1 week.
That was Jean Mackin reporting. Laura has a number of different locations. She is planning to send those Christmas cards. To name a few, 10 different addresses for the Coast Guard, 3 aircraft carriers, and bases in Qatar, Iraq, and Afghanistan. What an incredible display of Christmas spirit. That is Currents News. I'm Emily Drewby. Thank you for joining us because we are putting your faith in the news. Hope to see you again next time.